Welcome to the Frontline podcast, brought to you in association with the Atla Group. Atla Group is a collaboration of businesses with a collective history of over 130 years, bringing financial solutions to its clients in the world of accountancy, audit, advisory, fiduciary, and retirement benefit solutions. Visit atla.im today. On the Frontline podcast, we chat to leaders in business and successful entrepreneurs to bring you their in-depth and bite-sized opinions that will add value to you and your mind.
So thanks for joining me today, Lee. Much appreciated.
Thank you for having me.
So just on this bite-sized episode, we're just going to talk a little bit about your role at MS Risk, what you do there, perhaps something we can expand. Certainly, I believe our listening audience, a lot of them will be in the financial services area, so then how certainly the skills you and the firm have, how you can adapt them, but perhaps we start at the beginning of what sort of overview of MS Risk and yourself.
Certainly. So MS Risk is a crisis response and security consultancy. I'm the chief executive officer. I founded the company. My background is originally I served as an officer in the Canadian Armed Forces, and I left the military in the late 1990s to work for mining companies in conflict zones and difficult jurisdictions. I helped them understand their risks. I raised private security teams and trained them and led them to make sure that they were operationally and ethically competent for the work they were doing. In the course of that work, I came across protection racketeering and kidnapping and extortion and so on. And clients were asking me to help them. And in fact, the very first case I got involved in was in Mexico, where a geologist was kidnapped, and my mining client asked me to help them. And really, with very little expertise in this field, I said, yes, I think I can. And I began to make my notes and get organized. And luckily for the hostage, he escaped before I did any harm to him. So, but that led me into this field of extortive crime. And I had a role with a UK PLC working internationally, where I had a remit that included product extortion, kidnapping, dealing with bombing campaigns and similar. That work around the world grounded me and helped me develop my own methodologies for dealing with this. And so 17 years ago, I went into the consulting field. I started a business working for syndicates at Lloyd's of London, and today MS Risk carries on, and we advise, we respond for insurance syndicates, but we also work for corporate clients who are either self-insuring or managing these kind of perils themselves.
Interesting. So I think certainly, again, I go back to the industry we're in here, or I'm in here, in that financial space. We deal with banks and obviously they've got a wide network of clients as well. So, I mean, if you had advice for them chatting to their clients and speaking to their clients in jurisdictions, and, certainly in the space we're in, we'll have clients in the mining arena, maritime, places like that. They've got that opportunity to, here where they're speaking to clients, to speak to them about, what insurance, what risk mitigations are you putting in place as the client, so they can better understand the risks for their business. I presume, again, that's where you can add value to these situations and be brought into the fold.
Definitely. And, we work across the spectrum of business. So we've got hotel chain clients. We've worked with mining companies, energy companies, maritime, both shipping companies, but also port management companies, pipeline businesses, construction engineering. The range is limitless. One of the things I say to all these clients, regardless of what sector they're in, is the philosophy we came up with is, why do cars have brakes? And the obvious answer is to say, well, to stop. But actually, if you think about it, cars have brakes to let you go fast. So we're not here to bring in loss prevention and security risk controls that are going to limit the business or just be a pure cost center or retard the chance to grow the business. We actually should be there to enable the business to fulfill its intentions. And so if having control measures and a security risk management model that's been developed by us and is administered by us, if that enables you to go operate in a more difficult jurisdiction and do it safely, responsibly, and profitably, then we're actually delivering for our clients.
So I look at, again, in financial services, risk management, you look at our codes, our AML codes, everything's risk management. Obviously, that's something you're knee-deep in, day out. So I assume that education for yourselves as well, of that ongoing risk assessment, just continues to develop. You've never, as a business, never at a plateau, I guess. You're always learning new things, new ways to risk manage, and then deploying them, I guess, for yourself and your clients.
Correct. Now, there is some doctrine that underpins everything that we do, and it's based around a plan, do, review model. But as you say, risk environments shift. What's permissible in Afghanistan 3 years ago isn't so right now. What you can do in parts of Africa right now, you might not be able to do a couple of years from now. We'll shift with our clients' needs. One thing is it's important. It's easy for security people like me to come along. We're all ex-something, ex-military, ex-law enforcement, ex-something. And anyone can build Fort Knox. Anyone can come along and fearmonger and encourage their client to build higher walls, build bigger fences, and to spend more and more money on security. Really, what the organization needs is something that's proportionate. It's got to be risk-driven, and it's got to be proportionate. It's got to be scalable. So, if risk conditions shift and increase, that you actually are able to modify your posture to absorb that and continue to operate profitably and responsibly. And equally, if conditions modify and they lower, you need to know what's the trigger to say, actually, we can spend a bit less, or we can change our posture and reduce it and make it less onerous. So these are all important elements to any enterprise risk model.
Yeah, I guess that's a continuum moving feast, as they say, isn't it? So I think, again, in the sheltered life on the Isle of Man, and you talk about extortion and kidnapping, that feels like a world away. So again, when I sort of apply it locally and think about our own compliance within our business or other financial institutions, and then applying that to AML, I guess it's considering that we're dealing with clients all around the world. We're dealing with high-risk jurisdictions, and I'm sure you're dealing with them day in, day out. And just appreciating that the skills and attributes you deal with sort of at an extortion level will bleed back to money laundering. I'm sure you see that, and that's supposed to focus of ourselves as a financial services. That's one of the key areas we look at, is money laundering. So because someone's been kidnapped a long distance away, it doesn't mean it's not affecting us, or we shouldn't be having those thought processes and understanding that, because that, or somewhere that money is potentially getting laundered through systems and processes that we use here. No,
you're absolutely right. And I'm quick to say this is not some black art or dark skill, or a lot of people in my field will try to mystify it. In fact, I think it's important that security advisors, security consultants can demystify it and ensure that mainstream business understand there are methodologies that might not be well advertised for good reason, mm-hmm. but they're measured. They're measurable by the authorities, whether it's in the financial services sector or law enforcement and regulators, and that they work, and that this isn't just some sort of finger in the air, trust me because I say I'm good. There actually is a system to resolving these kind of crimes and helping organizations work through them.
Yeah, okay, interesting. So again, go back to the space that we see a lot locally on the Isle of Man. We'll have clients in the mining industry, maritime industry, retail industry. You kind of can give listeners sort of some examples of where you've seen risk issues. So let's take maritime. Obviously, off the top of my head, I think pirates immediately, but I'm sure there's other areas that you might help firms manage their risk around, whether it's supply chain, I guess, is another example, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, let's park all the eye-catching kidnap, hijack, piracy stuff. That's because
bread and butter.
It will seem too far away to people here. But simple issues: loss prevention, shrinkage. So in your supply chain, in your distribution network, you've got the whole risk of shrinkage. Now, it's interesting. I worked very closely with a number of universities and think tanks about 15 years ago, I can't claim it as my own, but I was a contributor to a thing called the ECR model. And the ECR model mapped out the causes of loss in a business. And really, we found, and I helped provide a platform to test some of the procedures. We found that losses occur in 4 ways in a company. The first one is process failure. And process failure is often, it's not being investigated, not being looked at carefully enough. So process failure in a retail environment can be 35%, 34% of loss, of unknown loss. Supplier error is another one. And in a retail environment, supply chain environment, that could be case quantity issues or variable weights, the way things are counted in and counted out can have disconnects. And so that could be 7 to 10% of loss. And then you've got good old-fashioned crime, are the other 2 areas where loss occurs. And you've got the obvious one, external crime. So that's if in a retail environment, shoplifting or burglary or robbery or what have you. And then you've got internal crime. And companies grapple with internal crime because it doesn't feel like they're living company values when they think bad of their work colleagues. But the people not living the company values are the very people who might be stealing from that company. So if you get the external crime, the burglars and the shoplifters, that might be 25%, 20%, 25% of your loss. But 100% of the security effort is looking at that one area, and it's discounting the internal crime, it's discounting the process failure, and it's discounting the supplier error. And so in that situation, that security model will never succeed because it's only targeting all its resources at external crime factors, external causes of loss, and it's missing 75% of the rest of it. Yeah. So being able to demystify that and map out the causes of loss in an organization, in whatever it is, making widgets, if you can go through the organization and map it all out, then you can actually be holistic in your loss prevention. And these principles, whether we're talking kidnapping, hijacking, protecting a gold mine in Mali, or managing a small business on the Isle of Man, it's the same principles underpin all of it.
Interesting. So, because again, internally we look at corporate governance as more and more, and rightly so, on the agenda of importance. So that, I presume, ultimately just dovetails into the internal crime you talk about there.
Yes.
Crime, yeah, whatever the right word might be. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I've noticed over the last 20 years of being in this private sector field, 25 years of being in the private sector, is that you go to big organizations and they'll have internal audit teams. If you actually sit down with those auditors and you say, how much of your time is spent actively trying to target and identify crime in the business? And actually, it's usually a very small proportion, if any at all. And so companies actually have the in-house resources, and it has to be more than just the security manager or the contract security company doing access control. Safety and security is really everybody's remit in any organization. One of the examples I used to use in another business, I'd say, when you got up in the morning, you locked your front door going out the house. And when you parked your car in the car park, you locked your car. Why is that? Why didn't you pay someone to do it? Because it's not unreasonable that you did it yourself. You self-secured. So if you're a manager in this business and we ask you to hold keys, or we ask you to follow certain procedures around handling cash or valuables, it's not unreasonable that a manager follows our procedures. Just as it's not unreasonable for you to lock your front door going out of the house in the morning. And really, the security director of any company, especially the big ones, in one sense, that person has the easiest job in the organization, because every single person, if they feel empowered, they've got the chance to raise the alarm if they see something wrong. And so really, in a company of 1,000 employees or 10,000 employees or what have you, that's actually 10,000 sets of eyes to spot a problem. And if they don't feel comfortable tackling it themselves, that's fine. They just have to have the empowerment to raise the alarm and tell someone so that it's dealt with.
Yeah, interesting. So just for our listeners, if they want to reach out, again, I assume you're always open, even if they just want to have some dialogue with you. What's the best way to reach out to you, Liam?
Well, if they're existing customers, they'll have a hotline that they can call 24 hours a day and connect them for crisis support. But quite frankly, Martin, they can always come through you or contact us, info@msrisk.com.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Thanks for joining us today and giving us a synopsis of MS Risk. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening, everyone.